Board Online, Board Offline. Today I'm bringing you how to play Doomlings. Now, Doomlings is a game coming to Kickstarter very soon. Should be about a week after this video is published. You can find the exact date in the description below, as well as a link to the Kickstarter page once it goes live. Before we get down to the game topper and I show you how to play Doomlings, I do want to mention our sponsor, Board Game Co. This is a fantastic website where you can buy, sell, and trade games. They have a great selection of games to choose from. If you're just looking to build out your collection, you want to buy more games, get them all in the collection, get everything, get all the games, right? They have a great selection to help you do that. Also, if you're looking to sell games, you want to get rid of your games, they will buy games from you. Very easy system to use over there. Clear value system, everything makes sense. Go check that out. And they have a really cool trade feature where if you have a Board Game Geek account where you've set up a trade list on Board Game Geek, what you want in trade, what you have for trade, you can then go to Board Game Co, input your Board Game Geek username. They will compare your trade list over there with their stock, build a custom trade list right there on their website. Makes it very easy to make a trade. I actually did that not too long ago. The games I traded for, I got within just a few days, sent my games off. All of it was very simple. Be sure to check that out. If you do, there's a link in the description below so they know I sent you over there. Board Game Co makes it easy to buy, sell, and trade your way into a better collection. Okay, we're going to get down to the game topper now. I'm going to show you how to play Doomlings. To set up Doomlings, first separate out the 15 Catastrophe cards and the 1 Birth of Life card from the remainder of the cards. Next, shuffle the 25 non-Catastrophe Age cards. Then from those 25 Age cards, deal 3 stacks of 3 cards. The remaining Age cards are set aside. Next, shuffle the Catastrophe cards and deal 1 on top of each of these piles. Now the players will have 3 piles of 4 cards each. Shuffle each of these 3 piles, making sure to keep them separate still. And then stack each pile on top of the other. Finally, place the Birth of Life card on top of the stack. This deck of cards should be placed within easy reach of all players. Next, each player places 1 gene pool card in front of themselves with the 5 at the top. The gene pool keeps track of each player's hand size limit, so each player starts with a hand size of 5. Players will rotate this card and or flip this card to keep track of what their current hand size limit is. Finally, players shuffle the traits and deal 5 to each player. The deck of trait cards should be placed near the Age deck in the center of the table. Generally, the gameplay goes as follows. The game begins when the dealer flips a card from the Age pile. The first Age will always be the Birth of Life. This +5 gene pool represents the 5 that is already on the player's gene pool card from the setup. Each Age will have its own special rules that players will follow during that Age. These special rules only apply to the round that they are revealed. The first player is always the player to the left of the dealer. Each player will take their turn by playing 1 trait card, and then the next player will go, and then the next. Once all players have taken their turn, the dealer flips the next Age card and another round begins. Now let's discuss how players actually take their turns. Players should always begin their turn by observing the rule on the current Age card and resolving it if necessary. Next, players will play 1 trade card from their hand face up in front of themselves. This area is called the trait pile. Playing trait cards into the trait pile is how players earn points for the end of the game. Some traits such as this one have effects detailed at the bottom of the card. As you can see here, discard 2 cards from your hand. Unless otherwise stated, effects occur when they are in the player's trait pile. Certain effects, like this one, are actions and can only occur when the trait is played directly from the player's hand. You can tell this is an action by the A icon at the beginning of the effect. If the effect increases or decreases the player's gene pool, as you see here, it is immediately active when it enters the trait pile and should be reflected as such. If it is removed from the gene pile by some other effect, it is immediately inactive and again should be reflected accordingly. Similarly, most effects are only active while in the player's trait pile. If a trait does not have an effect, it is considered effectless. To end their turn, the player must stabilize their hand by making sure they have a hand equal to their current gene pool number. In this case, I would need to draw 2 cards. And now my hand has been stabilized. On the other hand, if I ended my turn like this, I would need to discard 3 cards to stabilize my hand. Once a player's hand is stabilized, their turn is over, and once all players have taken a turn, the age is over. When a catastrophe is drawn from the age deck, the first player token moves 1 person to the left. A catastrophe has 3 parts on it. The gene pool effect affects the gene pools of all players. All catastrophes also have this secondary effect that must be resolved immediately. And the World's End effect is only resolved if this is the 3rd and final catastrophe to be drawn. If that's the case, then the game is over, this is resolved, and then scoring can begin. End-game scoring is resolved first by applying the World's End effect. In this case, discard 1 purple trait from the player's trait pile. There we go. Next, the player should apply any traits in their trait pile that are affected or affect other players. For easy reference, this symbol indicates a card that has an effect like that. Next, players tally up the face value found here of all the traits in their trait pile. This symbol indicates the face value of the card is 0. However, don't worry, the 4th step in scoring is to apply any bonuses or modifiers found on the player's traits. And you can see here that this effect modifies the value of this card. Once all players have tallied up their score, if there is a tie, the tied players will draw a trait from the top of the deck and apply only its face value to their score. Dominant traits have this gold star in the top right corner. Players are only allowed to play 2 dominant traits in their trait pile. Once a dominant trait is played into the trait pile, they may not be removed for any reason. If a player did somehow gain a 3rd dominant trait, they must discard it instead of actually playing it. The one exception to this rule is if the age card Birth of a Hero is played. You can see here, if you hold Heroic, play it now without restriction. That means that if a player already has 2 dominant traits and Birth of a Hero is the active age and they have Heroic in their hand, they must play it immediately and are allowed to have 3 dominant traits in that case. There are 4 different color cards in the game: red, green, purple, and blue. Gray is considered colorless and cannot be considered for color-designated effects. For a color to be considered the player's lowest color count, they must have at least 1 in their trait pile. So you can see in this player's trait pile, purple is the lowest. Red could not be considered the lowest because it is not in the trait pile at all. If a player has multiple colors tied for the lowest, in this case purple and blue, then the player gets to choose which one is being considered. For a color to be considered the highest, then it must be the highest without ties. In this case, green is the highest. However, in this case, neither is the highest. On the rare occasion that a player's hand is empty at the start of their turn, then they draw 3 cards and then skip their turn. If a player is ever asked to discard but are unable to fulfill the discard request for whatever reason, then they ignore it. Anytime a player is instructed to swap a trait card from one trait pile to another, they will ignore any actions that are on that card. If a player is instructed to steal from another player's hand, then the card stolen goes into that player's hand. If instead they are instructed to steal from a trait pile, then that card will go into their trait pile. Just as with swapping, actions are ignored during stealing. Finally, just to reiterate, this icon indicates that the effect will relate to the player's opponents in some way during World's End. Meanwhile, this icon indicates the associated trait has points or effects that apply at World's End. So there you go, that was Doomlings. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found Doomlings interesting. If you did, go over to the Kickstarters. Maybe this will be one you're wanting to back. to be perfectly honest, I have really liked what I've seen so far. The artwork is very, very minimalistic, but also kind of has almost a vibe of bubbly pop, but with a little bit of maybe a darker twist to it. I love the idea of you're creating this life and taking it all the way to the end of the world. Pretty cool idea. Go check out Doomlings, and until next time, if you're bored online, board offline.